About 9:45. Haven't quite achieved sky dark. There's some dust in the atmosphere, but it has improved a little bit. I've got the scope synchronized already. Synchronized to Altair. It was pretty much spot on. It blew me away, actually. The scope tracks so well. I did have to change the time a little bit to make it do so. Right now I got the scope looking at Messier 56. I'll set the camera on it and we'll see how well it lines. And we will do some adventitious studies that are of interest potentially in the Gemini 2 data set for NGCs. And there's our view of the location of Messier 56 globular cluster in Lyra just after doing a synchronization to Altair and Aquila. Okay, I imaged this about 5 days ago. It's NGC 6700, a galaxy in Lyra, magnitude 13.1, 1.4 by 1 arc-minute size spiral with a bar in lowercase c, 209 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 1846.04 plus 32 degrees, 16 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm hoping the galaxy will reveal itself on the screen. I don't have a very good viewing angle. It doesn't look very present to me. For a 13.1 magnitude galaxy, I do believe it's right about there. It's got an average surface brightness of about magnitude 14. Not a particularly good view, maybe due to the smoke in the atmosphere from the fires that have prevailed in Eastern Oregon for the last 3 weeks or so. I'm going to go ahead and skip along. This one's pretty close to culminating, and I think I probably want to go an hour later, but let me skip through a few of the 6700 series and we'll land at 6800. Maybe we'll get in 15 or 20 studies on the evening, and that will give us something to ponder and to appreciate, despite the poorish conditions and being probably a few minutes before sky dark, if it ever really does get dark. I'm seeing a little bit of color in the sky. That's probably reflected lights from the town of John Day off the dust of the smoke that is in the sky. We had an interesting thunderstorm last night. It rained for about 15 or 20 minutes, very hard, rather unexpected. That was welcome, probably cleared things up a little bit. But that is the conditions, and boy, that full moon's going to be upon us in no time, and we need to get an opportunity to do at least some imaging before knocking off for the next several weeks. Okay, the scope just settled on NGC 6710. This will give us an idea of how long it takes to formulate a nice image. At 128 flood, 42 decibels of AGC, typically takes 35 to 40 seconds to fully compile a decent image on the screen in these settings. Let me give you some data on 6710 as the image forms. It is another galaxy in Lyra. There were a couple of brighter galaxies, by the way, but they were too far north, 45 degrees plus northern declination. So Lyra does sport a few interesting galaxies. It should be susceptible to views in a 12-inch scope. This is NGC 6710, Galaxy Lyra, magnitude 13.1, 1.7 by 1 arc-minute spiral with a lowercase a, so once removed from lenticular. Also 209 million light years distant, quite possibly in the same galaxy group. Right ascension 1850-34, declination 2650-16. And let's hope we are actually getting a view on the screen. I do like, I've zoomed in a little bit with the Sony Handycam. I do like the quality of the screen. It may be a bit bright, but at least there isn't a large delta between the top of the screen and the bottom in terms of image flatness. So let me go ahead while this one continues formulating and check out our next. Oh, there's a globular cluster in Scutum. Magnitude 8.2, we've already seen something in that class. A magnitude 14 galaxy, also in Lyra. Okay, NGC 6713 is about as far north as we can go right now. It's at plus almost 34 degrees without getting some aperture block. It's a magnitude 14, smallest, 0.4 by 0.3, lenticular spiral, 242 million light years distant. Right ascension 1850-44, and like I said, almost 34 degrees north, 3357-35. Let me go probing around for our next potential study. Messier 54 is a globular cluster in Sagittarius. Let's not head that far south with the smoke in the atmosphere. Stay more towards the central third of the sky. Of course, Messier 57 is actually also known as NGC 6720, but I suspect it's going to overpower the screen, but why not have a look? Okay, let's capture, right from the beginning you can see that we are at these settings. Messier 57 is a bit overpowering. I want to capture the data on it anyway. Okay, yeah, this is not looking very ring-like, is it? There is a small donut hole. So I always call this, instead of the ring nebula right now at these exposure settings, the donut planetary nebula. Very overwhelming, but a nice star field around it. We're probably seeing stars at this point down to about magnitude 16.5. In fact, this star right here is fairly bright, and it is magnitude 13.1. Something I look forward to see in a 6-inch scope, because if you can see this particular star right in the perimeter of Messier 57, it tells you we're having a good night of view at 6 inches of aperture, magnitude 13.1. Okay, M57, also known as 6720, Planetary Nebula Lyra. Its magnitude, collective magnitude 9.4, largest, 86 by 62 arc seconds. Central star is brighter than I thought, fainter than I thought, sorry. Magnitude 15.8, and my memory was off a little bit. It's 2,900 light years distant. We're at 1853.35 right ascension and declination plus 3301.44. Okay, let's watch this one develop from acquisition in the field of view, NGC 6740. It's a 15th magnitude galaxy in Lyra. I would expect to be able to turn this one up, but let me give you the data on it so I can evaluate that a little more fully. 6740. You heard that? Some people like to make sure they are noticed by this volume of their exhaust. Especially I've noticed it with trucks here in the country. Usually it's small, revving, low displacement engines in the city, lowriders for instance. Anyway, let me give you the data on NGC 6740, galaxy in Lyra, magnitude 15, almost an arc minute, 0.9 by 0.8, spiral with a bar and a ring. A little too faint to see the ring, and probably the conditions don't warrant it. We're at right ascension, 19 hours and 50 seconds with a declination of 28:46:15. We're getting full exposure of the aperture on this, and we should be seeing in the field, but I will have to use the other galaxies and set up a pointer to be sure. But I think it's either maybe it's going to be in this region here. So have a look as I turn up our next study. Nice planetary nebula, and it's kind of small. It's in Aquila, so we won't go there. Planetary nebula in Draco. Open cluster in Lyra. Let's not go there. Galaxy in Lyra, but it's at 40 degrees. Let's see if we can get a good view at plus 40 degrees. We did not get a good view at plus 45. Let's watch this one come around. It looks like we're getting full aperture, or we're getting close. As you see, 6745. This part of the sky, we should be seeing galaxies. I'm down to magnitude 16.5. And Stephan's quintet plus a fainter member of magnitude 16.5 has been imaged using these settings and this telescope. I do see the galaxy right there. So that'll give us an idea where they should fall in. NGC 6745, galaxy in Lyra, magnitude 13.5. It's an isoblate galaxy, 1.3 by 0.5 arc minutes, spiral with some peculiarities, 208 million light years distant. We're at 190141 in declination, 40, 44, 58. Nice to be able to really make out some sense of texture and layout in this 13.5 magnitude galaxy. Oh, let's watch this from settling in. It's a faint globular cluster that I did image about a week ago, NGC 6749. I'll give you data on it. Okay, it's a faint, largish globular cluster, NGC 6749, in Aquila, so it's not quite, well, it's above the celestial equator anyway, so we can call it the sky's middle third. Magnitude 12.4, but largish, 6.3 arc minutes. So this baby's light is being spread out probably somewhere around magnitude 16 average surface brightness. Its brightest stars are magnitude 16.5. I wouldn't expect to get any resolution on it. The globular is quite apparent right about there. It's 25,000 light years distant. Right ascension 1905-15, declination 1, 5402. And at this distance, Messier 13, I believe, is somewhere around 25 arc minutes in size. And it's actually a little further out than this one. So this is probably a globular cluster about, let's call it a quarter the size of Messier 13. There may even be a sense of some of the fainter stars there. That would be impressive, magnitude 16.5 stars, but I could not guarantee that. All right, I already passed up a planetary nebula, but it was a bit small at 8 arc seconds. This one's probably twice as large. It's quite visible right there, and its central star seems to be present. This is NGC 6751, planetary in Aquila, magnitude 12, 20 arc seconds in size. Central star is magnitude 13, 8,400 light years distant, puts that at about 3 times the distance to Messier 57. And if you multiply this size out, it would be about 1 arc minute size if it were as close as the Ring Nebula. Right ascension's 1905-55. Declinations, maybe a little out of the sky's middle third, almost minus 6 degrees, minus 5, 59, 31. And you can see the central star, although the luminosity of the planetary emissive gases is pretty potent as well, so making the distinction between the central star and the planetary a little difficult, given its 20 arc seconds in apparent size. I do believe we are revisiting quite a few studies from a week ago, 5 or 6 days ago. NGC 6760 is a globular cluster in Aquila, magnitude 9.1, so a little faint for anything Messier-like. Faintest Messier is about magnitude 8.5. It's also quite small, 2.4 arc minutes. Brightest stars are magnitude 15.6. They should be resolvable tonight, and there does appear to be a few bright stars embedded in this globular cluster. We're at right ascension 1911-11, and declination 1 degree, 1 minute, and 49 seconds. Yes, Matilda, there is a second planetary nebula in Lyra. NGC 6765 Planetary Lyra, magnitude 12.9, fairly large, 38 arcseconds. Central star is magnitude 16. It's 7,600 light years distant. This planetary is probably roughly the same size intrinsically or absolutely as the Ring Nebula. I do not seem to be getting a good view of it. This could be a dumbbell type planetary right there. We are looking along, instead of looking at the polar regions, we're looking at the equatorial regions of this planetary. Central star's magnitude 16 might be perceptible there as well. So this is an elongate dumbbell presented planetary nebula in Lyra. Right ascension 1911-06 plus 3244. Here we have, or maybe don't have, I do believe we do have it very faintly right there, is NGC 6772, another planetary nebula, this one in Aquila. Magnitude 14, but largest, 75 by 55 arcseconds. Central star is magnitude 18.1. I would not expect to be able to turn that central star up unless I were operating at the very extreme limits of this scope on a very good night of seeing. Planetary is 4,100 light years distant, almost as large as the Ring, so intrinsically probably a little larger by about 20%. We're at right ascension 1914-36, declination -2, 42-24. We'd probably get a little better view if it were closer to being on the zenith than it is. But there is a view of this ghostly planetary, large planetary nebula, NGC 6772. Not too far from the planetary NGC 6772 is planetary 6778. As you recall, it was in Aquila. This one too. It's also known as NGC 6785. It's magnitude 13.3, but much smaller. It's 19 by 13 arcseconds with a magnitude 14.8 central star at a distance of 10,300 light years. That's pretty distant for a planetary nebula. We're at right ascension 1918-24, declination -135, 47. The magnitude 13.3, it's possible it is right there. It could also be another dumbbell presented type planetary nebula. Looks pretty bright to me though, but you know, it is small, so it's concentrating quite a bit of its light. I'll have to check out where other studies have turned up on the screen to verify that's the location, but I would suspect it would be somewhere right around this region, and I have fairly decent confidence that this is Planetary Nebula 6778. Nice starry region in the Milky Way. This particular globular cluster, NGC 6779, may look a little familiar. I'll give you an idea of its location. It's right ascension 1916-35, declination 30 degrees 11 minutes and 1 second. Magnitude 8.3, its brightest stars are magnitude 13, so the brightest stars can be resolved, and I have confirmed this through a 6-inch scope on a decent night of seeing. It's a class 10 globular, which means the magnitude delta between its brightness should be somewhere around magnitude 5. So if you subtract 5 from the magnitude 13 of its brightest stars, you get 8, and Messier 56, which is also NGC 6779, collective magnitude is 8.3, so it falls in fairly well. The cluster is 5 arc minutes in size. It's 32,000 light years distant, which pushes out a little further than Messier 13, and therefore is probably about a third to a quarter of the size intrinsically than the Great Hercules globular cluster itself. Okay, This is one of my favorite planetary nebulae in the summer sky. I forgot the number, so I'm going to have to go through this. Let's see, I think it was 6781. And that is what it is. NGC 6781 is a planetary nebula in Aquila. We are clearly looking at its polar region. It's purely round. Magnitude 11.8, but 111 by 109 arc seconds in size. So we're talking about an arc minute and a half. The central star is magnitude 16.9. It's roughly the same distance as Messier 56 at 2,300 light years, slightly smaller. Central star is about a magnitude and a half fainter at magnitude 16.9. I do not believe we can make it out, although there is something that looks a little bit stellar there, but it's off central axis. We're at right ascension 19 hours, 18 minutes, 28 seconds, declination 6 degrees, 32 minutes, and 19 seconds. I like this planetary nebula. What a good look. And a very nice star-filled screen. NGC 6781, Aquila. Okay, let's watch this next planetary nebula develop. It's NGC 6790. It's in Aquila, which seems to be a bit of a retirement home for stars, doesn't it? There's quite a few planetary nebula located in this constellation. It's probably the constellation from the galactic core is probably some 10, 20 to 25 degrees from the galactic core, which I would estimate probably is somewhere around 10,000 light years distant. I'll give you some data on it, see if you can pick it out. NGC 6790. Nice star-filled region in the Milky Way. NGC 6790, Planetary Nebula Aquila, magnitude 11.4, but very tiny, 2 arc seconds. So basically, this particular planetary takes up 1 pixel of resolution on the screen. The central star is magnitude 16.1, 4,900 light years distant, 1922.56 in right ascension, 1 degree 30 minutes and 48 seconds. At magnitude 11.4, it would prove to be fairly intense. It probably would spill outside the bounds of a single pixel. And I assume whenever you spill outside of a single pixel, you're basically spreading your light over maybe 6 roundish arc seconds of space in terms of the imaging on the screen. So there we have it, probably too small to bother with, but I did want to have a look at it anyway. Okay, very few open clusters this evening. This one is NGC 6791, and the reason I picked it out is because it has a lot of stars. I believe the number was 300. So let's go ahead and watch it develop on the screen. I don't want to shift around too well. It's in poor position. The scope, however, I think is getting somewhat blocked, aperture blocked. But hopefully we can make this cluster out. I do believe I've imaged it earlier. It's NGC 6791, open cluster Lyra, magnitude 9.5, 16 arc minutes in size. So it basically should spill outside this axis of the screen. Some 300 stars, the brightest are magnitude 13. It's a class 2-3. So the stars should be reasonably of the same magnitude, but not very compact. Very distant open cluster, 19,100 light years distant. That's pretty far out there. 19 degrees, 20 minutes, 53 seconds. 37 degrees, 46 minutes, and 18 seconds in depth. northern declination. All right, I'm going to start capturing the image as soon as we've landed. This will be the last of the adventitious studies for this evening. Give you a chance to see if you can figure out what we're looking at here. I will give you a clue. The constellation is Aquila. And as already noted at Aquila, it seems to be a bit of a retirement home for aging stars. Personally, I wouldn't mind going there as my years advance. This is NGC 6804, Planetary Nebula Aquila, magnitude 12.4, nice and large. 63 by 50 arc minutes. The central star is quite visible at magnitude 14.2. It is so visible that I could easily see that we could probably catch stars down to magnitudes 15.5 to 16 on this evening. The planetary is 5,600 light years distant, and as I already said, quite large, 6350, so it's about twice as far away as the ring, and therefore is probably 50% larger, given those values for its apparent size. And the central star is quite a bit brighter. We're at right ascension 1931-35, declination 9-13-31, and we will, of course, wrap with a couple of favorite studies this evening. So let's move on to those. Here we have a favorite that we've frequently visited with, and it gives it's a good tell for the seeing conditions. Sky position is excellent right now, maybe 5 or 10 degrees pre-culminatory. It is, of course, the Dumbbell Nebula, Messier 27. We're getting a sense of the football shape of the planetary, I'm sorry, did I say globular cluster? Of the Planetary Nebula, there. I'll give you some data on it, although this is getting repetitious given how often I use it as a standard reference for seeing conditions. And Messier 27's planetary in Aquila, magnitude 7.3, 8 by 5.6 arc minutes, 1,300 light years distance. So it's about half the distance of the ring, which means its size would be 4 by about 2.5 degrees, and that would still be 3 times that of the Ring Nebula. If it were at the same distance as the Ring Nebula, we're at right ascension 1959-36 and declination 22-43-16. We will call this our Carpe Noctem view for the evening. It is quite extensive. I am actually quite surprised by the quality of the view, despite the smoke and dust in the atmosphere due to fires in eastern Oregon. However, I would say we are looking almost in the sky. We are definitely in the sky's middle third, a bit away from the zenith, but we are in the darkest part of the sky, and we just got, I would think, a satellite passage. Notice on that passage that it was very delineated, which typically means a satellite. It wasn't smoky, it didn't have turbulence in it, so it was not a meteor. Although, if you want to get out over the next week, I believe, the Perseids will be at their peak. So you may want to get outside and view the Perseids. Typically, you want to get out when Perseus is just beginning to rise, so that would be around 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the evening would give you the best view of meteor activity during the Perseids. So what I'm going to say now is Carpe Noctem.